I've been thinking about building a new router table, but then thinking about what I'd do differently, I actually found that I really like my old router table and there's really nothing major I would change. So why not dedicate a video to it? It's a benchtop router table that sits on a cabinet with drawers. The box of the router table is made of a pretty coarse spruce plywood. The top of the router table is made of phenolic resin coated birch plywood, and the fence is also made of birch plywood. The tabletop is 50 by 80 centimeters and the fence is around 15 centimeters high. In this top drawer there are my router accessories, like some really big and chunky router bits, and of course also a lot of small router bits, and also these burrs which aren't related to the router table at all, but I just keep them in there, just like these stones and some really old funky drill bits. I have two of these depth gauges which work really well. On this one you kind of have to pull out the battery halfway so the thing won't drain itself while being stored in the drawer, which is a little annoying. On this one, which is actually my favorite, the battery also drained really quickly, but I just added this regular AA battery to it, which now basically should last forever. Back in the corner there's just some miscellaneous bits and pieces. And of course I also have some feather boards, which work really well and are really handy. The router bits I use the most, I actually just keep in the door of the router table, which is very convenient. This thing is automatically zeroed when it's switched on, and then I can use it to set my depth of cut very precisely. Accessories like the fence and the feather boards are fastened to the table using these homemade T-bolts, and these ride in these big T-slots that I milled directly into the wood. And I made the cutter for cutting those myself years ago by welding some saw teeth onto an 8mm shank. And these are very strong and they operate kind of smoothly if there's not a lot of dirt in the track. The slots that the fence is bolted to are of course stopped, and that's why they have a hole for sawdust to escape and not get compacted at the end of the slot. The most important accessory of a router table is of course the fence, and this one is extremely sturdy and it screws down to the table with these big star knobs. By opening these wing nuts I can adjust the throat opening according to the size of the router bit. Dust collection is built right into this fence underneath here, where the air is sucked in through the throat opening and then directly down into the router table. And this works extremely well. For adjusting the fence, I first rotate the router bit so that one of the cutting edges is facing forward. And then I zero the gauge and then use the gauge to push the fence till I'm kind of close, and then I lock one side of the fence and then I can use the other side for the fine adjustment. And then lock the fence down. For edge jointing I use the spacer to bring this side of the fence forward, and then I align the fence according to the router bit. I made this little tool here so that I can raise the router from above the tabletop, but I never actually use this because I just reach in through the door and raise and lower the router that way. And then I can reach in here with my thumb to engage the spindle lock and change my router bits. The router I'm using in here is a semi-professional router that's branded AEG. It has a cylindrical body and it's been a fantastic router over the years. It doesn't seem to care about being encapsulated in a small dusty box, and the only thing I had problems with is the switch. It stopped working and then I replaced it once, and when it stopped working again I just soldered the wires together and potted it with epoxy, and now the router doesn't have a switch anymore, but it also doesn't need one because it's just in stationary use. The router motor is held in place with this clasp, and then I have this knob for adjusting the depth of cut. It's very basic, it's very simple, but it works great. And it's actually quite a powerful router, which lets me use even big router bits like this pattern bit that was sent to me by Find By Tool from China for exposure. A link is in the description. Oh, and another thing I had to do to this router was to change the main bearing, but that might have been due to the fact that I used it to mill cast iron, so it's probably not the router's fault after all. For extra convenience, I made this control box which opens and closes the blast gate automatically, and it also switches on the dust collector via a wireless connection. Of course, this is pure luxury, and a regular old blast gate with a golf ball handle on it would do just fine. Speaking about dust collection, there's a neat little feature down here, which is this cover that's held up by this magnet, and it covers those holes. And the thinking is that sometimes a workpiece can get basically sucked into place by the dust collector, and then it's really difficult to push the workpiece through. And if that happens, I would open this cover to relieve some of the pressure to allow me to safely and easily pass my workpieces through the router. I don't really use this very often, but it's a neat little artifact. So that's my old trusty router table. I hope you liked it. Bye.